Hey, this is Lucy from Spitfire Audio, and today I'm going to be showing you my new piece which I've written using Ólafur Arnalds' Stratus, which is October's monthly highlight. And I've thrown in some Icelandic church bells, some sampled voices, and some of Ólafur Arnalds' other Spitfire libraries. We'll be chatting along the way about the Icelandic music scene, some key ingredients for making bold and emotional soundtracks, and some cool features hidden within Stratus too. I'll be breaking down the piece in terms of motion, timbre, and shape. Growing up, I was always really obsessed with Icelandic music. Sigur Rós is like my go-to relaxation music, and I'm crazy about bjork. And when I was 18, I went to Iceland on a sort of more personal pilgrimage. I climbed some mountains, bumped into some fairies, and it was really cool to hear Icelandic music within the context of Iceland. So I'm going to play you my piece now, which is called Mývatn, which was an area where I camped in Iceland and saw the northern lights. And listen out for the quite distinct timbres of Stratus and also those church bells. So that was my piece, Mývatn, and I really like watching the piece zoomed out because you really see the building blocks of the piece. It's sort of like an Icelandic skyline or, mountain range almost. And I think being bold is a kind of Icelandic quality in terms of structure. You hear that in pieces like Remember by Ólafur Arnalds, where it takes around 4 minutes for the drums to kick in. So when they do, it makes that moment really sweet, and the music's sort of like passing clouds. Things just come and go when they do, and nothing's forced. And Stratus has that quality as well. Things really unfold in their own time, and that's the magic of it. So I guess quite a nice feature in this piece are these floating sections where the listener loses sense of time a bit. And I've even actually changed the tempo in these areas too, to really give that dreamy quality. What's cool about Stratus is you've got these driving loop rhythms, And then you've got these pads, which are really textural. And these are really cool to alternate between, which I've done a bit in the piece with my floating sections. But they also blend beautifully together. So let me break some of these textures down for you. So in this float area, we're layering up loads of different warps. So here's Bouncer for you to have a listen. And I'm panning this from left to right as well to really help add some more movement as well. If you don't know how to do that, you can select A on your keyboard and then choose the type of automation you want to do, volume or panning, for instance. On top of this, I'm layering more dreamy textures. So this is Dusty Tape, which is a sort of detuned, fluttery piano. And here's Choir Fifths. And I'm panning these sounds to different areas of the stereo field. And then we've got these Icelandic bells that I mentioned. So when I was in Iceland, in Akureyri, I heard this church bells ringing and I ran after them down the street to try and find the sound. And it was super windy, as it always seems to be in Iceland. And I'll play you the original sound so you can hear what that was. And I've changed those sounds slightly by adding some delay and reverb and cleaning them up a little, so this is how they sound. And in the context of the whole texture, and you can hear I've also recorded some vocals, actually my own voice, which I'll isolate for you to hear. I always think it's cool if you can add a little something of your own into your piece. And you'll also hear that I've used these chamber string evolutions of Ólafur Arnalds, which are really dynamic and give a lot of motion. There's lovely motion in those strings, and I think motion is a real key ingredient in Ólafur's music. When I started getting into film music, I noticed that his music was referenced loads in temp tracks. And I think there's a real cinematic quality there, something really elemental. And I suppose that the constant motion of the weather outside must be hugely influential. I think the most important thing about creating satisfying motion is thinking about how the harmony and the melody are working with the rhythm. If I play the melody of my piece, you'll hear how the melody becomes pushed and syncopated and plays a bit with the listener's expectation. So we've got rather than, which is nice too, but I think having it pushed adds that element of intrigue to the melody. I think if we're sustaining something, it's really satisfying to change something underneath it. So at the beginning, I've got this matrix piano. So this is the matrix in the interface, and you can see that basically you've got different voices or different notes, and you can assign different rhythms to those notes. So for instance, if I play a G, but I could change the rhythm, Then I'm going to add another voice. So it gives you loads and loads of possibilities to create these webs of sound. So at the beginning, I've got this inverted pedal, which is like a pedal up high, which I'm using the matrix to create. And then I'm adjusting the chords with the static piano. So a little hidden gem within Stratus is if you go in the advanced folder, you can actually find the static piano under pianos. So you've got center, left and right, which is a really useful little tool to have. But the matrix of Stratus create these instantly inspiring options for you to play with. I think the satisfying thing with some of Ólafur's music is that he's not afraid to repeat things, but he adds these subtle changes which really add light and shade to the music. You can hear that in his theme in Remember. But he alternates this chord sequence a lot in the piece. This A-flat inversion and this F minor. There are similarities there with songs by Bjork like Unravel, where she repeats the same chord progression throughout the whole song. It's as if gravity keeps pulling us back to the same chord, and her voice is the dynamic, changing element. It's quite a mesmerizing quality, this repetition, and we see that in Ólafur's music as well, and in the Stratus library and the matrices themselves. They're quite addictive to use. So another feature of motion in this piece is this heartbeat pulse, which I've added in my final section. I've taken the mondo bass, which is a warped sound within the Stratus library, and I've bounced it in place. So I've made it into an audio file, and then I've cut it up and pitch shifted it down to create a sort of kick drum. So this is the original sound. And then this is what I've done to it by cutting it up and manipulating it. So a bit of a DIY approach, but it creates this sort of disco in the sky, Northern Lights vibe. Ólafur is a real soundsmith, and he tends to focus on the sound itself rather than having loads of different voices. Take his piano, for instance, which has that rolled off high end and quite a percussive touch. It really draws you in. And Ólafur says something really cool in his video about making loom, which was that sizes equal to characteristic, not volume. And he's certainly not afraid to be quiet in some of his tracks, which I think is really bold, and it also gives the image loads of space to breathe. So rather than just adding layers, I think it's a lot about balancing between different sections, taking out certain things. And this is what I've done actually between my different sections. In my A section, I've got these looped piano rhythms and strings, and then when we get into the B section, which builds up to the end of the piece, we've got these more electronic warped sounds. Let me break some of those down. So this is the synth matrix looped rhythms. And then I'm punctuating those with some synth shorts. I'll play you those together so you can hear. And then I'm creating a pulse using the sub-bass patch, which is in the warped sounds again. And I'm actually using the extreme end of the register of the instrument to create this noise effect, which is actually kind of percussive in quality. I'm doing a similar thing with one of the looped matrices where I'm using the extreme end of the register and it creates a sort of percussive loop. Then as the section builds, the live voices enter and the strings, which adds this crispness to the texture. I think it's really important to think about verticality in your music, not just thinking about the horizontal, the linear form of your piece, but thinking about how you can create depth within the music by using texture. And to thicken out the texture, I've added some more warp sounds. This is one I absolutely love called Synth Waves, and this is Evolution 3. It's such a warm synth sound. It's almost human. And actually, I think that's what's really cool about Stratus is you've got these really cool, colder synth sounds and then these warmer sounds. Maybe even with Icelandic music, there's something there about Icelandic music having warmer chord progressions using colder timbres. Who knows? That's just a theory. And then there's this patch, which I've used quite a lot in the piece called Moonship, which reminds me of a cold whistling wind. And I've used this at the very end of my piece, along with this unresolved string chord to create this kind of tension and enigmatic quality at the end. So within the warps, you can adjust in real time some of these effects parameters by assigning them to something called the yoke. So here I've got my delay as X and the feedback, and I've got my delay activated here. So if I play a chord for you, you'll see what I mean. And what's more, if you command click on the parameter, you can further adjust it here, which is really helpful. So perhaps my piece is a bit too active to be truly Icelandic. That's probably my Scottish side coming out. But you can see how adaptable Stratus is as a tool, and you can really make it your own. But it's a great palette of really intimate sounds and instantly gratifying looped rhythms. So thanks so much for tuning in. If you liked the video, hit like. If you want to subscribe and see more, hit subscribe and let us know your favorite sound in the comments below. Happy composing, be bold.